I guess I have to do the intro now.
Yeah.
We still calling this like
Never seen it.
Never seen it? I don't know.
Sci-fi.
Reflective look at media and what's not. Cue music.
What? Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess we could. We're gonna have to edit this, but I was like, we could.
But I'm super excited because this is the culmination of the last couple of movie, not even reviews, like movie looks, whatever you want to call it, stuff that we've been doing. And this one's on Interstellar, which we built up to doing 2001, and Contact before that, which was like the first one we did. So we're finally getting to it. I guess I'll be taking the helm a little bit on this one. But this is Magnolia House.
But I was like, we could. I never thought about doing some talk, then getting into the intro.
I think
music.
we could play it by
so
ear.
a lot of podcasts do that,
Yeah.
and it's nice.
Sure.
I hope we do this one justice, though, because it is approaching midnight, and
Yeah.
I've had a little bit of whiskey.
This is a different format. So first time we're doing this at night. We literally just watched the rest of the movie today, but started it last night. Because this is how life is right now. But I mean, we've both seen it before, and we've talked about it a bunch, and we've kind of primed the conversation a little bit. I think the last couple we've watched together, which I don't know how you feel about us watching the movies together.
Well, I always feel like we're wasting the juice, but it's always fun.
Yes, it's fun.
But also, I don't think it necessarily wastes the juice, because I probably am going to want to bring up the same topics anyway.
Right.
Like some of the plot.
I think as we
holes
walk through it, it'll be kind of the same. But I do hold back sometimes when I want to say something when I'm watching it.
Yeah.
And I don't say it.
Yeah,
And
but do you remember what you're gonna need
I
to
don't
say?
know.
Yeah.
But you sometimes say what I'm thinking.
Oh, really?
We're watching
I always feel bad for people who watch movies with me,
Oh, really?
because
You do talk
I
a
don't
lot
shut the
in
fuck up.
movies.
I know, and I
That's
know
some
it's
people. I don't know. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Unless like, I don't know. I guess I haven't watched a lot of movies with people the first time around. I tend to just watch them.
I
on my own
can't. I don't think there's any situation in life where I can sit for 2 hours and not say anything. And that might be an issue of some kind.
I don't know if that's an issue. I mean, unless it's like it's your thoughts you're running away from. Maybe.
Well, I think it's also we're getting real deep here. It might be a compulsory thing where I just have to always be saying what's on my mind, and that's not.
I mean, some people, their personality is just like they process things out loud, right?
Yeah, that's definitely me.
Right.
I process things out loud and through conversation.
Sure. Yes. And I say the same. I literally walk through a conversation in my head before I say anything out loud.
Oh, I don't have the mental faculties for that.
I can't do
that.
I have to vet everything.
Yeah.
And then because I've been scarred of like this is kind of my life. So we can get to the movie, but like my kind of experience in life is seeing everybody kind of like be social and do things and be spontaneous and fun, and then I'm like, I'm gonna join in on this. I'm gonna give my 2 cents, and then fucking like put it out there, and then just nobody responds.
Crickets. Yeah.
And it's just like, this is why I keep doing it. So, but I just do want to say that the episode I just watched that you recorded about Isabella House was great.
Thank you.
Super stoked that it's going to be out there, and I've listened to it twice already.
Oh, appreciate it.
So,
that's cool. Yeah. I was really happy with
Yeah.
that episode. That's like I was telling you earlier, that's the first thing I've been proud of myself in
awesome.
Probably years.
That's a mental,
Straight up,
psychological mile marker.
Yeah.
That I feel good about this.
Yeah.
For me, those don't last very long. Then I feel like I fail at the next thing. But
it's
good to have
that's
those.
probably coming.
It's good to look, but it's good. That's why I love doing art, though, is because what you make exists out there.
Yeah.
And you can come back to it.
Yeah.
And you can like feel like, oh yeah, there was a point when I was doing.
And I was hesitant, and I didn't, obviously, but I might still when I release the episode and send to Neil the link to it. That episode was so good, and because she was so great,
Yeah.
It gave me all of the confidence in the world to do more.
Oh yeah.
Like, I feel so much more confident moving forward with more special guests because of how that one went. And I owe a lot of it to her because she was so knowledgeable.
But she was a great guest.
And so personable.
Guests, the guest can make or break it too, I feel like.
Yeah.
So I still want to start these out for people who maybe haven't seen it.
Yeah.
Of doing a very short summary. And I think we should practice doing a really short summary.
I was just going to say we should try to do. Did you realize our first one was 2 hours long?
Yeah.
I didn't notice that one until I looked at our.
It was no, and it is honestly not very not very listenable. I tried. I've not listened to the whole thing through.
Yeah.
So but that was a rambly conversation.
Yeah, it was a first too.
Sure. Yeah.
So
I think we're figuring out the format, but my summary that time was terrible.
Oh, I don't remember.
I'll get that probably added 20 minutes to the podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try and do a super short summary of Interstellar.
Yeah.
And like just bare nuts and bolts. And then we can get to how I discovered that nobody knows what happens in that movie.
I thought I did. I genuinely thought I did.
You probably understand all these points. So basically, Interstellar takes place in the future when the world has kind of collapsed due to food shortage, right? So
as a result of climate change, right?
I think it's as a result of climate change and just human habits and this wasting of resources and the overpopulation of the earth. I think it's probably a lot. I think it's kind of ambiguous to what specifically.
I totally thought it was just straight up climate change.
Maybe, but they always talk about how it's I guess climate change is our fault too. But whatever happened, basically the generation that now is, adult, who's, Matthew McConaughey's character, Cooper, is an adult. They know the world before, but have fallen into this, they call it a caretaker generation, where it's all about kind of being more modest in society and just growing food and making sure we can survive till
Son
we can
make a great farmer
again. Yeah. So the world's kind of fallen into disrepair. Cooper, the main character, played by Matthew McConaughey, used to be an engineer and a space pilot
and
for NASA,
husband of Jodie Foster. Yes.
In Tony's fantasy movie that he splices every single sci-fi movie together, there's a lot more going on. But so he's kind of bitter about the fact that he's now just a farmer in the world.
Yeah.
And ends up through mysterious means of these weird happenstances in his house, these weird anomalies in his house, stumbles upon this secret NASA exploration experiment to basically either move people off the planet or repopulate another planet. And when he stumbles upon it, they recruit him to be the pilot for the mission. And he reluctantly leaves because his family's still on Earth.
Which again sounds fishy to me because it doesn't make any. But they do say they chose you, right?
Sure.
Because I was like, well, how would he stumble on it? And they're like, how did you get here? And then they're like, actually, we want you to pilot this expensive fucking last chance for humanity thing. It's like, that seems a little flippant for them to choose him.
A lot happens in the movie that seems pretty constructed. Yeah. But when you're going through it, he stumbles upon it. They take this kind of sign from their messengers. There's like those anomalies at his house kind of are this weird message that have been interpreted by the secret NASA people as messages into space. And they find out there's basically someone trying to help them get to other galaxies.
Much like Contact.
And in 2001: A Space Odyssey, there is a wormhole out by Saturn that he pilots the craft through, and there have already been people that sent out to scope out the possible planets. So he's on the mission to go to the planets that have pinged them back saying, these are habitable planets.
That was right by Saturn too? Or was
that was
Jupiter?
By Saturn. In the movie 2001, we can talk about this later, but in the movie 2001, the wormhole is by Jupiter. In the book, it's by Saturn.
Okay.
So they go through the wormhole to one galaxy that has 3 possible planets, and they're all trying to save resources to see which one is there. And they have Plan A, which is get people off the planet to the new planets, or Plan B, which is send they to set up a new human colony. First planet,
which also fun unknown fact, every sperm sample they had on ship was supplied by Mark Wahlberg. Every single one.
Because that's the new master race.
Yeah, it's the new master race.
1,000-year Reich.
A bunch of Mark Wahlbergs. Okay.
Is that the world you want to live in?
I fucking love Mark Wahlberg.
There'd be some great movies on that world. But so the galaxy they go to orbits this black hole, which causes a lot of time dilation stuff, a lot of relativity issues. Part. First planet they go to, water world, where time passes much slower, relatively speaking. So an hour there is 7 hours back.
They 7 years?
7 years, sorry. An hour there is 7 years. Yeah. Outside the
time dilation.
The black hole, whatever. They find out that the person landed there, sent the message back, and then got killed by a wave that happened in a weird time sequence, very recent to that person's experience. One of their crew members dies. They go back and then decide which planet to try next. End up going toward the man who was leading the mission, who ends up having lied about the fact that
Fuck you, Matt Damon.
That he found a habitable planet in order to save his own life.
Yeah.
He messes it up, tries to take the ship, destroys their space station. Matthew McConaughey has to recover the space station and can no longer return to Earth, even though they find out already that basically there is no hope of getting anybody off of Earth. This is basically just a colony mission at this point. And they didn't know that when they left. And Matthew McConaughey sacrifices himself to send the ship, and with Anne Hathaway's character, I forget her name, Amelia, spiraling off the black hole to the third planet in hopes of setting up the colony there. But then he finds out when he's in the black hole that whoever people sent them the message save him and use him as a way to send the message to his daughter.
To ultimately save humanity.
To save the human race. The human race on Earth.
Yeah.
And then he ends up in this weird space where his daughter is now way older because he's gone through all these weird relativity, time dilation,
which is
wormhole stuff.
Also, it's interesting because both Plan A and B did work out.
In the end, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we don't know about Plan B. But it was a habitable planet because in the end...
She had her helmet off.
Yeah. In the end, when his daughter is super old and dies...
she says go.
She says go to find Brand, who is the woman who went and stepped in the planet. So, there.
Yeah.
How about you just say, since I did the summary, your initial reaction to the movie? And we watched it again together, and you had a lot of questions about what happened and what was going on during the whole movie. A lot happens. This is an epic movie that happens in there's basically 3 pretty intense scenes.
Which are
them.
Obviously the wormhole.
Apart from the whole setup, which is
Tesseract.
pretty. Yeah, there's the water planet, which is and you know it's pretty devastating when he comes back. They didn't expect to be down there very long. He's desperate to get back to his daughter. So when he finds out 23 years has passed since they went on that planet for a few hours,
he's just wrecked.
He's like, oh shit,
you just ruined the most important part of my life, which was watching my kids grow up.
Yeah.
Like the most important thing in my life.
Yeah, he gets back and watches 23 years worth of messages.
Yeah. And that I thought it was interesting how it was obviously a clear-cut choice that they could have had the camera on the messages, the kids saying the message, but they had it on him.
Oh, yeah.
And the intensity of his face and just breaking down. Yeah. Like you could see, I missed all of this.
He realizes it pretty soon. His son is still the same age when he's like, I'm missing out on their life.
Yeah. And not only that, how fucking jacked would it be is I just left a couple days ago.
Right. Well, I mean,
I don't know what the
sleep.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I mean, it had been months.
But also, mentally, you're asleep. So to you, it feels like a couple days ago. But even if it was 6 months, 8 months, a year, I just saw my kids. I just saw them.
Yeah.
And now they're my age.
Yep, they're all grown up.
They've lived the most important fundamental parts of their lives.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, I think it's worth mentioning too that his daughter really resents the fact that he left.
Yeah.
That was a big thing because he was like,
and the goodbye was so hard.
He was trying to save the world, but also always thought he was going to be able to come back.
Yeah. And that goes back to Matt Damon's line where he's like, I always thought I was going to be ready for death when it came, but to be honest, I never truly even considered the idea that this planet wasn't the one.
Yeah. Which is,
yeah.
I mean,
but I get that because it's
like life.
Yeah.
It's like you don't sure, it's possible I end up a failure, destitute, but you don't imagine that's you. That happens, and I know it could happen.
I don't imagine that that's my exact scenario.
When I think about my life, that's not gonna happen to me, right? Or even just someone close to you dying really young or anything any big life devastating event.
Kobe.
Sure. Oh my.
Yeah. That was, I think, on a countrywide basis.
Nobody thinks about that was of course you knew he could have died, right?
Yeah.
But it's you didn't think extremely healthy person,
wealthy, which isn't an important factor.
Freak accident.
But
it's just again for Matt Damon, roll of the dice of he just assumed that being the leader of the expedition and being the good guy, he was gonna get the planet that they could come to, and He freaks the fuck out.
But also, how do you remember back when I'm derailing again? But when they were talking about the Mars missions, we're gonna send people to Mars. It's a one-way trip. Also, they'll only be able to survive for like a couple months. It's like, how fucking stupid of an idea is that? Like, just wait a few years till we're advanced enough. Like, you really gonna sign your life away for a couple months? A couple months on a planet.
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't do it.
You wouldn't do it?
No, fuck no.
Huh.
Which begs another question, which is going to be derailed. But I'm going to ask a question, then we're just going to go right back to it. I had this idea the other day.
Uh-huh.
I was actually driving to the studio. I was like, if you could be granted all of the knowledge of the universe, but you only had like 6 months to live after that, would you do it? All of your questions answered. What is the universe? Where did it come from? Is there a God? What is the meaning to everything? But you only had like 6 months to live after
This is like the Faustian bargain type thing.
What is that?
Like, would you give up your soul for like
for
transcendent knowledge
Yeah.
in some way?
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everybody's call, right? Like,
Yeah.
I
don't
personally,
know.
what are you asking me? Personally, I would.
yeah.
I don't think so, because I'm the cliche, the journey is the destination type, you know, and ups and downs. I'm like, kind of, as much as I would love to know,
But there are so many unanswered questions.
But I also, my personal philosophy is that these big questions are, in a way, we are the ones creating the answers. It's a very creative effort, and it's done through this kind of hive mind creative, like any major question we have about life and consciousness is one that we would have to figure out. Yeah. And maybe we have to figure it out because we don't know the answers, but
it makes me wonder what Douglas Adams' intention was behind making the answer 42. Was it like, you're never gonna know, so chill and just it's fucking 42.
I mean, I think honestly, not to like read too much into it, but I would say what the point is that the answer isn't the answer.
Yeah,
you need to know the question.
Yeah.
Because we don't have the right, because it's like, the deep thought, the computer's like, yep, I ran it several times. It was 42.
42.
It would have been easier if you gave me the question, but like, it was 42. They're just like,
that, okay, that would be a great series to run through.
It would be.
It's so fucking, there's so much to it.
There is a very real, and like in terms of like the like real meat of like any sort of piece of art is like that I think holds a mirror up to the world. Because it's like real life is absurd. I mean, we've been watching Nathan for you a little bit when you come over. Like the people that exist in this world, it baffles me. The way people think sometimes baffles me. But just the fact that the world creates such absurd things at all is just like, I think there's some truth to the fact that he jabs so much at the universe. I don't know.
That guy is such a comedic genius, and it's such a deep thinker. And I was listening to him. He's like, "Well, why did I pick 42?" And he's like, "Well, I had to pick a number that sounded funny." And it's like, so it's just like
42, 6 times 7.
And he was like, I couldn't pick an odd number because that already sounds inherently weird. And he was like, he was coming up with all these reasons why he had to pick the number 42. It's just,
that's so funny. But yeah, so what's your like most interesting thing you think that Interstellar brings up beyond the fact that it's obviously like a really epically like amazing visual
cinematic
movie.
Obviously movie. The soundtrack is so memorable.
The score is it really like hits
I guess it does deserve the title score, not soundtrack, because it's so epic.
Sure. I mean,
this isn't fucking Garden State. Just kidding. I fucking love you, Zach Braff, and Garden State.
Well, that was amazing. A movie that like the soundtrack was such a big part of it.
Yeah.
But
for me, the most interesting will always be the time dilation.
Okay.
Because when I think
that's a real thing.
Yeah, it's a real thing in our real universe. That is something that, if we had no advancement in science, we would have no knowledge of. We would think, time is time. It's the same for everything.
Same everywhere.
No matter where you go. But I always get this, when I think of time dilation, I get this mental image of a universe full of individually wound clocks, all moving at ticking at different speeds, like tick, 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 and some are like tick, tick,
right,
tick, all in different areas of the universe.
Yep.
And when you go into one, you dip into that time speed, and that's just fucking weird because that also. And I'm a fucking Neanderthal, so I don't know if I'm even conceptualizing this the right way. You could almost imagine if on one portion, in one area, there's this race that's living their whole existence, right? Mm-hmm. And to them, all of time goes by. And then this group over here lives their whole thing.
Right.
And all of their existence happens in this blip. Mm-hmm. And to them, it feels like this long... millions of years, and to us we see it go and it just happens, and then it blinks out like it never existed.
Right.
And it's like that's so fucking trippy.
Time is relative.
Yeah.
In that respect. I mean, time is even relative to years. Like the fact that going to church for an hour seems so long and playing video games for an hour seems so short.
Yeah.
That is an experience of time.
Yeah.
That is like, it's not empirically different because we measure time very like objectively, but like subjectively,
yes,
the time is different in those two things. Like, and the fact that we experience time going more quickly as we age is a very real experience that has no objective correlation. I feel like I don't know, maybe.
And I don't even, because I don't think that's necessarily the same as physical time dilation.
No,
it's like a conceptual thing,
and that's where,
right?
Yeah, and that's where like physics, physically, it is. There is a change when it comes to time being different and different, even levels of gravitation. I think even on Earth, even a foot, there is a measurable difference.
Well, that's why they say
this foot of space.
Tyson loves to throw this around. He's like, without Einstein's relativity, we wouldn't have GPS, because he says the satellites are in space; they're a measurable distance away. If we didn't factor that in, your GPS would be
always off,
super off,
because the time is different up there. The time is just different,
which is fucking weird.
And I don't know. I'm not a physicist, or I don't even know what field this is. But in my understanding of space-time, we think of it as space is a constant, more or less, and time as stretching. In this respect, when we're talking about it, so we say like closer to Earth, time moves faster.
Oh, but you're saying the physical.
But gravity actually warps. No, large mass warps space-time, creating gravity.
Yeah. So is it the trampoline effect?
Yeah.
You put a bowling ball, and so it goes.
Right, but it's the fact that space is actually. So think about it. You can think about it, I think, inversely. Again, I'm butchering this. Like there's a ball moving through space, but closer to a large mass,
it'll fall faster.
Space is stretching out. Maybe I'm saying this wrong. But it keeps the same velocity, but is traveling over. Yeah, that's right. Because closer. So when they're on the planet, in Interstellar, when they're
so hard.
when they're in Interstellar, when they're on the water planet, time for them is moving more slowly.
Yes.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Because 1 hour to them is 7 years. Yeah. Outside of the gravity pull. So that's because there's a large gravitational stretching of space and by the black hole. So what's happening is, let's say there's an object moving at a constant speed, but space is being stretched out. So what a foot here is like this long, and then space here is stretched out, so a foot is actually this long. But it's the same speed moving through both of them.
That is so...
But it takes a shorter time to move through this foot, but since this space is stretched, it takes a longer time to move through this foot.
That's a really...
So it's actually space... You can look at it, again...
And it's the same amount of space, right?
Well, you can look at it in two ways. So you can look at it the same amount of space, and the time is different. Or you can look at it the same amount of time, and the space is different. And that's where space-time kind of collides in a weird way. And again, like, I'm not the person to quote on any of this stuff, but that's my understanding of how that works.
This is super weird. Us talking about this is giving me flashbacks to like second grade. I used to be super intrigued by Einstein, so I would get like all of his books at like a really young age. And I remember trying to understand this in like second grade, and it just didn't make any sense to me. But he gave the clear example of I think his famous example is like two astronaut twins. And if one stayed on Earth and the other went to space, he would be a different age when he came back.
Right.
And I never fully understood that till I got older. Oh, I don't fully understand it now, but I never.
But that's a harder example because it's like the stretching and bending of space doesn't really account for how you age necessarily, right?
Well, I think he was talking about the astronaut brother was going closer to the speed of light.
Right.
And so his speed was affecting his aging.
I've also heard it.
Just like, what the fuck, man?
I've also heard another example.
We're in a fucking simulation. None of this makes sense.
I've also heard another example, and maybe this is way too much of the science part for this movie, but the movie is very scientific, to be honest. Even Neil deGrasse Tyson says this is very like sound, scientifically movie. Another example I've heard is, say there's a train that's accelerating toward the speed of light. So like it's going faster and faster until it reaches the speed of light, which is basically the speed limit in the universe as far as we can understand it. So let's say there's a train moving forward, and then somebody is running forward on the train, right?
When they're at the speed of light?
When they're approaching the speed of light.
Oh, okay.
So like when they're getting close to the speed of light, someone's running, right? So if you take the velocity of the train plus the velocity of them running, that person can never go faster than the speed of light, right?
Yeah.
So as the train speeds up, they have to be slowing down,
even though they're
otherwise
moving.
they would break that limit.
Yeah.
Right? Because if they were running, if Usain Bolt was running on a train.
Well, even let's just push that all the way. Okay. Let's say they're already going the speed of light.
Okay. Then that person isn't moving at all.
That.
Because if they were moving at all on a train going the speed of light, they would necessarily be moving faster than the speed of light. So once they reach the speed of light,
I'm saying let's say they're riding the light beam, right? Let's say it's like a little brick and it's moving the speed of light.
Okay.
And then they start running.
Right.
They're not moving at all.
They couldn't. I mean, at least I think at least in terms of the way we understand it, because they can't be moving faster than the speed of light. So there's no way they can be. Yeah. Their velocity could be greater than what they're on, which is why, from the perspective of something moving at the speed of light, time does not pass. Yeah. Right?
Which is what we were discussing during the movie, which is...
From a photon's perspective.
Which is also...
It is absorbed. It is absorbed the second it is released.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's absorbed literally the second...
From its
instance.
Again,
from its perspective.
That's subjective time, not...
Which is what we were talking about, which is from the Big Bang... A photon will be released, and to us it'll take 7 billion years to reach us, or whatever it is. But from its perspective, it just blipped into existence. Right.
And that's my question that I would love to ask somebody who would never talk to me because they're too smart. But my question is...
Will you go on a date with me? That's my problem right now.
What does it mean from that light's perspective that... it doesn't, like, what does it mean for its existence that it is emitted at one point and absorbed from its perspective at the exact same point in time?
Instantaneously.
What is happening before and after? Like, does it experience time? Like, is it being emitted and absorbed and then becomes, like, I don't know. How does time affect it
afterward? Does that mean
it's
in all places at once? Is light God?
I've had this crazy idea when I read Brian Cox. He's like he's the popular scientist from England. He's like this rock star. This rock star scientist because he plays in a band music. I read his book on quantum physics when I was trying to at least kind of understand, and it's made for very people who don't understand anything to understand. He talks about photons and that kind of thing, or maybe it's electrons. Anyway, he also talks about how what's it called? Antimatter. Yeah, is basically the opposite. I don't know what the word is for it. Basically, if an antiproton and a proton collide, right, they
nullify each other.
Yeah, blink out of existence. Yeah, but also in the opposite thing, out of nothing, an antiproton and a proton can be created seemingly out of nothing. But I think if you follow the math, you could also see a proton moving forward, and then if it switches its matter state, it could also be that proton moving backward through time. The antiproton is just a proton moving backward through time, right? And if photons,
so if it collides with itself,
but no, it doesn't. I'm just saying, like at something happens at that moment, and like, so you can look at it as this proton is moving forward through time, right? And then something happens, it switches into an anti-proton, and it starts moving backward in time. But from our perspective of time, there is an anti-proton and a proton that are moving both forward in time that touch and then blink out of existence. But if you don't have time, if you're not restricted by our flow of time, you could see it as maybe a proton moving forward and then backward in time.
Yeah. Oh.
Maybe. I don't know.
God, that's...
I don't know. Again, that's
a little over my head.
Yeah, and that's something I think I made up out of whatever science fiction part of my brain exists.
But this has me thinking, you said speaking to somebody who's too smart to talk to you. I actually think we could get some physics professors, local ones. I think that's
Would they be interesting, though?
I think it's always interesting when
I have qualms with scientific people sometimes.
I think it's interesting when you get a couple dum-dums with a smart guy and be like, could you, like, you know, just like asking ridiculous questions that they might have the answer to.
But I mean, in Interstellar, the characters of Matthew McConaughey, Cooper, and Amelia, who are both scientists, are very interesting because they're very complex, you know. Yeah. But they do say things at points.
Yeah, one used to be married to Batman.
Even the small thing, like when they're talking about ghosts. And, you know, him and their family, like, oh, ghosts aren't real. That you can't scientifically prove them, you know, blah, 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 blah. I mean, in the course of the movie, they prove how ghosts are real.
A version of ghosts
in some way.
Real. Yeah.
But that whole idea of just like, if science doesn't have an answer for it, it's not real.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I just like, I can't. Yeah. Because there's so much in the world that we don't understand that, like, why would you just write it off because it doesn't fit inside the schema that you have? Yeah. Even though I'm very interested in science and it's very fascinating to me.
But I'm sure we could find somebody who's not so.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I guess. I think that's very true.
But yeah. At this point, you know, one worry I have is that, and this is probably irrational, but running out of, and we've only had 2 guests, so it's not going to happen for a long time. But running out of interesting people locally to talk to.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah. But anyway, back to Interstellar and the things we found most interesting about it. I mean, the time dilation was definitely numero uno.
So when I first watched this movie, you know, I was just fascinated by kind of the epic sci-fi nature of it and all the time dilation stuff, and just the kind of, for me, it was like the him being the god or like the ghost, and then the godlike nature of the alien / possibly future humans beings. Yeah. But Clementine brought up this really interesting point. My partner Clementine, like when she first watched it, her main comment was that why are people so focused on creating human civilizations somewhere else? That was kind of like her main, like, why is that such a thing for some people? Which it really exists now, you know, and even now people are trying to
colonize in this Mars. Case, it was they were ensuring we don't go extinct.
Right, yeah. So Michael Caine's character, Professor Brand or whatever, he's the one
Alfred
that kind
Pennyworth.
Yeah, he was the one that is kind of pioneering this whole mission to, like, either save humanity or
But did she have qualms with that?
She feels like she has
it's our time, it's our time.
Honestly, it's a very millennial, I think, frame of mind, and you see it a lot in other movies too. And one example I'll bring up is you've seen Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah.
Okay. The main character.
Fucking weird movie.
The main character. Well, not even the main character. The stoner guy.
Yeah.
Who I think is kind of the main character to me.
Yeah.
He has this.
Shaggy,
if you watch it, he espouses this view from the very beginning that humans had a run at it. We kind of fucked it up. Yeah. Someone else should get a turn. That's kind of his philosophy. And he kind of says it the whole way through. And at the end, that's what happens. Yeah. Is they have this opportunity to, like, assuage the gods and, like, save humanity, and they choose not to. I think that is a very, like, live feeling out there.
But because they had to sacrifice themselves, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was a pretty selfish decision. Because you're going to die anyway, stupid.
Yes, but again, the idea is, and the idea with this whole colonization thing is that we couldn't even get Earth right.
Oh.
We had a long time to figure this out. Yeah. We still have a chance to figure it out.
That's another Neil deGrasse Tyson thing where it's like, you're going to try to go and terraform a planet. If you can fucking terraform another planet, fix
this
Earth.
one.
Fix Earth.
Right.
Like, yeah.
And if we can't get this right, why do we have this obsession with like doing it again somewhere else?
Also, how shitty of a human race or of a race are we that it's last call? The world's gonna end. Can we at least stop fighting? And I know the armies were disbanded and all that stuff, but you're telling me with 100% of Earth's resources, we can't figure something out? Everything we have, we can't say, okay, this is clearly going to wipe out all of us. Maybe we should put all our chips in one basket.
So Matt Damon talks about the survival instinct and how, and even the whole plan A, plan B thing in the movie. Like Michael Caine's character, Professor Brand, says, we would never have tried to put all our resources into colonizing a new planet if we didn't think there was a possibility we could save ourselves.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon's character is the epitome of that, in that he sacrifices almost the whole mission to save just himself because he couldn't survive. Wow. Anyway, when I was talking to Clementine, she brought that up. I hadn't really thought about that part of the movie, just how that kind of brought that up, and then it made me think of this these kind of two perspectives. Cooper, Matthew McConaughey's character on one hand, and Michael Caine's character, Professor Brand, on the other, in that Professor Brand wants more than anything to save the human race. Yeah. And he takes on all the guilt of knowing that he's basically leaving the world to die in order to save the human race. And then Matthew McConaughey's character, who wouldn't give a shit about that if he couldn't save his daughter. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And like he is like just fighting to live his life with the people he cares about, and would never have gone on the mission to save humanity if he knew it meant leaving his daughter, right? But then watching it this time, it also made me think of the fact that Matt Damon's character, Dr. Mann, is another kind of point in this, in that he sacrifices everything to save himself. Yeah. Like completely like.
But that begs the question, why did he go on the mission in the first place? Oh, but he did say he didn't really even consider failure as an option.
I think it was like this, almost like self-glory type
heroic
thing.
Yeah.
He was going to be the champion, and when he realized he wasn't, like it was like, oh, like if this world isn't about me, then it's not about anything. Yeah.
Ayn Rand.
I think,
it's not I will that will die, it's the world that will end.
Right.
Fucking true.
And those people exist, right? But
I exist. Yeah.
I think those 3 points are what is most interesting to me in this movie, watching it again the second time, and this viewpoint. And I would love to delve into each of those characters. Professor Brand's self-sacrifice morally, I think he believes he's committing a sin by lying to everybody.
It really weighed heavy on him.
Yeah, and and you see it when he dies, and I think that's why he confesses to Murphy, is that he I think he took it on. I think he accepted it. I think so. When I talked to Clementine about it, and I'm more of like existentialist kind of frame of mind, where it's like there is no right answer to this question, whether or not we should save humanity or curse humanity or save the ones we love or save ourselves, right? Yeah. These are just the kind of the options out there, and whatever you choose, you have to choose it wholeheartedly. And each of these characters chooses that wholeheartedly. They have wrestled with the question, they know the answer, and they will fight to
Where does Anne Hathaway lie in that?
That's an interesting question. Watching it this time, I definitely thought that her and Matthew McConaughey were very much on the same level. Yeah. Because as much as they disagree in the movie,
they're both kind of letting their hearts lead the way.
Yeah, and they like have an understanding, it seems. And the whole speech that she gives about love, and the whole understanding
which he comes to grips with later on
in the end. Yeah. And I think he really is convinced of that in the end. And I think they are kind of on the same ilk. And I think if in terms of the movie, that is what I would say. If he was putting forward any sort of like, this is what I endorse, or this is the philosophical. And again, I don't think all people who write and create things like that always consciously do that sort of thing. They just create a story that, puts a certain idea and worldview forward. I think that those two characters are kind of the epitome, or like if you were going to choose a path, like this is the path to choose, and this is the world. It's because the world is built this way, and this is what the true, love is a very important part of the world that we don't have science to understand, but is very important nonetheless. But yeah, all those characters, they choose their path without, like, they've thought about it and they choose it without regret. Yeah. As much as it pains them.
Except Matt Damon, maybe.
I don't know. In the end, he's like, I think his whole, when he like leaves Cooper for dead, he's like so much like, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
Like your survival instinct is alive and kicking, and so is mine. Like I am doing the exact same thing you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm just doing it. I'm hoping I win because our survival instincts are pitting us against each other.
But do you think Matthew McConaughey's character would have been, because Matt Damon's is like, I need to survive for my sake, and I think McConaughey is more like, I need to survive more for my children's sake.
Yeah, totally.
You know? So there's different motivations behind those.
Completely.
Yeah.
But they talk about, and you would say that, Professor Brand, Michael Caine's character, he's fighting for the human race's survival.
Yeah.
His survival instinct extends to the entire human race.
But he also sent his daughter, his child,
and
on the safer plan.
I'm sure that's a part of it, but he doesn't go along, right?
Yeah.
And not only that, but he lies to everybody, and no doubt he goes down in history as someone who, potentially lie. I mean, maybe he believed there would be no history because nobody lives, but I think his character seems genuine enough to have grappled with a decision and taken the weight of that decision on his shoulders in a way that would never happen in real life.
Years.
There would be committees and committees and committees of people talking about the issue, but like
it's from years of looking out for Bruce Wayne. Who else held the weight of the world on their shoulders more than Bruce Wayne?
And he learned his ways to save humanity.
Yeah.
But
ultimate sacrifice.
To me, that was the most interesting thing about the movie, and in terms of what I like to talk about on the Never Seen It stuff is just like philosophically and in terms of a worldview, what is this movie offering? And I think that's a very deep look, and
well, also I think this movie, especially at the time, because it's a pretty unique movie. It's very awe-inspiring, very beautiful, very scientifically accurate. I think it got a lot of people stoked about science that were more so on the fence, not necessarily super stoked all the time about it. And especially the cosmos. And it blows my mind that more people aren't interested in it, because it's the most amazing and wondrous and trippy shit of all of existence.
Sure.
But I think it really did its job when it was initially released, which has got people kind of amped and interested.
Well, I think in part of it must be the fact that it also pays homage to just the hard everyday life people struggle.
Yeah.
Because the characters like him in the beginning having to basically beat his head against the wall being a farmer, and having his son be a farmer who and his son just takes on that identity full force. That's the hardship in life that people experience that stops them from experiencing the awe. The real question of life in a way is, it's not that there are the right, wrong decisions, right? It's whatever decision you make, you have to make it wholeheartedly, right?
But also you will never know what kind of person you are until you put in those positions. Sure. And that's why
But those decisions make you who you are.
Yeah. And those are the questions. But that's why I do empathize with Matt Damon's character, because I can't say that I wouldn't do the same thing.
And when we were talking about it earlier, when we were watching it, I think each of those characters are looking at this abyss, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of that existential
a literal abyss.
I mean, for him, literally it was an abyss, right? Or the black hole, you can see that as an abyss. But they're looking at the extreme mortality of humans and themselves.
It was Interstellar when he said, I just don't get it, man. It's 3 inches of whatever, and then it's nothing forever. You know?
Actually, that was a really good scene. A very small scene when him and Romilly.
Yeah, Romilly, which is such a cool name. And he gives him to cool down, the headphones.
He's walking through the space station and he's got the headphones in, and I assume when I first watched it, I assume he's listening to music or something and whatever. And he comes up on Romilly and he's like, I can never get over this. This 3 inches of aluminum, and then nothing out there.
Forever.
Forever.
For millions of miles.
And then Cooper's character, Matthew Cooper says, they're the best yachtsmen in the world. Some of the best yachtsmen in the world don't know how to swim.
Yeah.
and it's to them it's a similar experience of like they're
on an adventure.
So yeah, I mean, but they're in their ship,
Yeah.
and beyond that ship, if they fell off the boat or the boat capsized, they would die essentially, right? And for them, it's the fact that he says we are explorers, and this whole thing throughout the whole movie is that like the human race is more than just this simple life of surviving and scraping by and like doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Humans are always pushing the boundaries, and that's his whole qualms with the fact that he is part of this caretaker generation that's just trying to like rebuild society.
That's a great point. And one thing
he wants to push it.
Bill Nye, beloved Bill Nye, always says, he's like, why do we do science? Why do we venture out into space? He's like, well, knowledge, but equally important, adventure. It's an adventure. Yeah. And to me, and I don't get how everybody doesn't feel this way, venturing into space, I can't even imagine a greater adventure than that.
The final frontier.
That's the pinnacle of human experience to me, seeing what else is out there.
But that at one point in time was unfathomable.
Yeah.
Like it was, the West or, across the ocean. Like that was at one point the frontier.
Yeah.
And like we are a species of frontiersmen.
This goes back to Star Trek. The intro to Next Generation is space, the final frontier.
Yeah, totally. And just to bring another reference in, in the Matrix when Smith talks about how humans are a virus on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's easy to look at humans, and it's a very good point to make that, like, in some ways we really push the envelope too far and like do too much. And that's part of the reason that this world in Interstellar is probably overpopulated and there's the crop collapse and all the things that are going on. But I think the aberration in our mind, whatever pushes us further, is exactly what pushes Matthew McConaughey to want to, be that explorer type. Yeah. And I mean, thinking about it now, there is this kind of dissonance in his character when at the start of the movie, he's all about like not wanting to do more, right, than just his simple life. And I think that's why in some ways he accepts the mission to go out into space. But then he kind of quickly goes back and is like, whoa, well, actually, I don't want to do this if it means giving up my family and being with my daughter. And
this is, I don't know if this necessarily relates. I had a topic that I really wanted to bring up with you, but I never found the right moment. I was thinking about this the other day. I live a pretty poor life. My family's always been poor, right? And I was sitting in my dad's house, and it's kind of a ghetto area. The house itself is kind of ghetto. Dad, don't watch this. And I was sitting there, and I was like kind of sulking a little bit. I was like, God, I'm like, is life ever going to get better? And then I was thinking, I'm going to El Salvador in a couple months. And when I go there, it's way more poor. Sure. They have just the bare essentials and the means of accessing things like water and food and working hard labor in the fields. Like my family literally worked on and owns a coffee plantation that they worked on their whole lives while they were there. Yeah. They still own it. And when I go down there, I'm not steeped in, wow, this place is gross. This place is poor and ghetto. It's like, this is beautiful. This is culture. This is my family history. Huh. And it makes me think it's all relative. I feel down on myself because of my current living situation, and I feel poor relative to some other people around here who are living in nice houses, new clothes, nice cars. But when I go over there, I don't feel that. And is it almost like a hierarchy thing? It's like, where you are in a current hierarchy, and that makes you feel bad, and you want to progress more to get out of that current stage.
I mean, my reaction to what you're saying is that what you experience when you go there, as opposed to what you experience living here, is that
I know I'm going to come back. That's one thing.
There's something in terms of the lot in life and what you have to go through, and maybe it's your hierarchy, something about what you experience here in the U.S. in terms of the class that you were born into and are a part of right now. There's something that's missing even at that low level that you get to experience regardless of the hierarchy that you experience in El Salvador. Or maybe you don't experience the hierarchy there, but there's something that you get out of that experience there that you don't get out of here.
which
it's probably, I would say maybe it doesn't have anything to do with class. And there's just something, there's a poverty of experience being part of the lower working class here in the U.S. Which I definitely feel that as well. And I think there's a lack of real living that happens
in El Salvador.
Or
a lack of here and a real living over there.
Yes. And I think it's
and it feels more real, in tune with humanity over there.
The real experience of being a human on Earth.
Yes.
Being very connected to what
you're
nature,
doing. You're harvesting the world around you. But if you were to flip that from their perspective, they just want to get over here.
Sure.
Because that means toilets, showers, heaters in the winter.
Right.
Comfort. Yeah. The basic comforts that we take for granted here. But it is really, we want what each other has. It's like they want the basic comforts and we want something to put us more in touch with our human nature.
Right. And I think it's each group has a lack they're trying to fulfill. Yeah. And I don't think it means that one is inherently better, one inherently worse. I think it just means that neither of you are living a full experience. Yeah. And if I had this, I don't know who is living a full experience, but
that's one thing I think about, and we're getting off topic of Interstellar, but I think about in terms of my future. If this was it, the current life that I've experienced since forever up until this point, it's not fulfilling. It's not, I mean, it is in certain aspects, but I do sometimes wonder what would it be like. That's why I long for like a farm life. Like that sounds so, it feels tangible, like real. This whole working a 9 to 5, it's artificial. And I know your whole view on all of it's artificial. Like it's all,
I mean, I would
not artificial, but none of our society is natural.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's natural in the respect that it's a natural evolution.
Human nature and anything.
But unnatural in the respect that we created all of it.
Yeah. It does feel like we're wasting a lot of time doing this rat race.
But what's the goal?
Yeah, I don't know. But I don't feel grounded in our society.
Right.
It doesn't feel grounded at all.
Yeah, and I think the big sin of our society is that, and the real, honestly, a big trouble of being American is that we don't have a really cohesive sense of who we are as a nation. We have no identity that like grounds us beyond the like weird political mythology of the founding of the country and stuff. But a lot of other, I think, societies and cultures have this tie to like what makes them a people and what makes them who they are and like that kind of thing.
It's I don't know how that was tied in, and I don't know why I brought that up. There was something you said that triggered that thought in my mind.
I think just I was talking about maybe Matthew McConaughey feeling like he needs to go out and do something,
and then
more,
eventually
but
backtrack.
Then like he needs to, I think maybe that duality is present in him, where he feels one lack in terms of like human existence has been impoverished by the need to do a certain sort of lifestyle, caretaker. And then but then doing that, making the choice, consciously making the choice that like I need to go out there and do something, and maybe lying to himself a little bit, and that it's the betterment for humanity. Yeah, and I think that's where he doesn't agree with.
I do think Brand's he was. Goal, I think his daughter could kind of see that. It's like you say you're doing this for the right reasons, but really, well, he also does openly say, "I need to exist right now. I can't be your ghost right now."
Yes,
you know, and that was he was being very straightforward.
Well, and he has the conversation with Donald, the grandfather. I think his name is Donald. Yeah. John Lithgow's character. And
Trinity Killer.
Yes, the Trinity Killer. He warns him the right thing done for the wrong reason is still like the wrong thing to do. Yeah. And then later, like, so, and I think he's saying, because Matthew McConaughey at that point, Cooper is saying, I'm doing this for my kids. I'm doing this to save the world. Yeah. And his father-in-law or whatever is saying, you can say that because it's true, but it seems your motivation is that you just want to be out there and on the frontier again. Yeah. And then later he realizes that like he's kind of doing everything. He is kind of doing everything for his family, and maybe in that way, all along it was true.
Eventually did become true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because then he argues later with Amelia, Anne Hathaway's character, that like when they're on the water world, she goes to get the data for whatever fucking reason. Again, we don't know.
Yeah.
It seems a very pointless gesture for her. But she's saying he says to her that like, I'm keeping my mind on the mission. And she says, no, you're thinking about getting back to your family.
Yeah.
I'm keeping my mind on the mission.
Yeah.
And I think they kind of circle around each other in this way of like, in some ways they both believe in the mission, but also in other ways believe in caring about who they care about.
Yeah, because she wants to get back to her loved one on another planet.
And that is, to bring Contact back into this, I thought a lot about that speech when we talked about Contact, because in Contact, Matthew McConaughey's character, the priest guy, it falls in love with Jodie Foster's character, right? And he thwarts her efforts to go to the machine,
such
right?
A dick.
Sure. Well, except he says that he's doing it because he actually represents humanity and thinks that.
I think that was also true.
I think I think again, like both of those things were true to a certain respect. Well, actually, he admits later. He says, "I didn't really do it because,
humanity.
For humanity, I did it because I didn't want you to leave."
And that's a selfish dick.
And that's, but
you're gonna stop me from the greatest fucking adventure.
But what happened? Yeah. What happened?
It worked out.
But he stopped her from going initially on the mission.
She would have died.
Blew up.
Yeah.
And the pod blew up. Right.
Yeah.
And in a way, it was his caring for her and his love for her that ultimately helped her get to the point. Because if he hadn't stopped her out of his love for her, she wouldn't have been able to survive to actually do what she really wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so that made me think of like, there is a motivation out of maybe like human connection, human bonding, love that in some way drives, like the real meaning of life in a more poetic way, you know. I think that's what it is. And like you see it in both these movies. Well, you see it in Contact in a very poetic way because the story ends up kind of being able to be more fulfilling the way it rolls out. But they say it very explicitly in Interstellar. Anne Hathaway gives that whole speech about how she wants to go visit the planet that Edmonds is on because she cares for him.
Yeah.
And
does that make her wrong?
And and she admits it. She's like, I have like, as a scientist, I'm saying that love is something out there that's drawing me toward this thing, and it's influencing my decision, but I still feel like it's the right decision because I'm making it out of love. Yeah. And Matthew McConaughey.
I just loved his response, which is like, honestly, it
could might be, and it might be.
It could make you wrong.
Right. Yeah. And it could. Yeah. Right. And I think, again, it's about making those decisions and making them consciously, because she doesn't make it like, she doesn't pretend that she's like, she's really being rational or anything like that. She's saying, I think this is the right choice. And my motivations are out of love, but I think that love is a factor. Yeah. And it's something that connects us. And
he comes around internally. He finds that to be true,
and it's really interesting in the end when he comes around, because he says that like these higher dimensional beings that are sending us messages, influencing all these things, and orchestrating these events, they're able to experience the world unbounded by time and whatever other dimension they're a part of. And they can experience it unbounded, but they have nothing to guide them. Yeah. There's no guide to like, they can't send a message to her directly, to Murph, his daughter, directly, because they have no ability to like find the right moment to do it. Yeah. And his place, he's just a messenger in a way. Yeah. Like, again, he says he's not chosen, even though he feels like he initially was chosen. Yeah. He's not chosen. She was chosen, and he's a method to communicating with her. Yeah, to tell her in the right way, because his love for her can guide her in a way that she can receive the message. And the people who are unbounded by time and by human experience don't have that foothold in that reality. And I think it honestly, like it's a very beautiful way of looking at the world and incorporating love into these people who are very scientifically minded, clearly. And it's just, I think it's really well done. Yeah.
Well, it's the only two things that could travel through space and time, gravity and love.
Yeah. Well, she says, I mean, I don't agree with her, but she does say love is the one thing that we can experience that transcends space and time.
Which I thought, when I heard that, I was like, you're an idiot. Like,
It's very cheesy, but I think to make the point they make, I think it works. You know.
Did you guys ever get a chance to listen to probably not, but the Carl Sagan, Andrewian thing?
No.
That's so fucking beautiful.
But I bet that influence. He clearly is somebody who experienced love very deeply, right?
Yeah, and it just blows my mind. We had this small discussion about how, like, when I was a kid, I used to think about, like, Leonardo DiCaprio. Specifically, I would think about Leonardo DiCaprio. I was like, he's a real person. He's somewhere on this planet, and this very second, he's doing something, whether it's eating his lunch.
He's still doing something.
He's doing something right now as we speak, whatever it is, sleeping, banging some 23-year-old, because that's what he's into.
Is he not married?
No.
Oh, I don't know.
His oldest girlfriend in the last 15 years was like 26 or something, 27. Yeah, like he's in. Yeah. Anyway, I digress. I used to think about celebrities, and initially it was Leo, how they're real people doing things on this planet this very second, and then move that forward to alien species on other planets. They're out there somewhere. I'd like to assume.
I think it's safe to assume.
I think it's pretty fucking safe to assume. They're out there doing something right now. And they're probably, I know we can't judge anything about them, their physicality, if they have minds or something. But I think if they have influence on the world around them, they can move in they have something analogous to a mind and a body that is in connection to each other, and they can move throughout the world, right? They are probably asking the same question if they haven't already advanced enough. What else is out there? They're probably thinking about us, not us specifically, but the idea of us right now in the same exact way. And the reason I brought that up because I think of, it's just cool that Carl Sagan and Andrewian put their love on a record. I'm going to explain a little bit for the audience. Andrewian and Carl Sagan fell in love, they fell hard,
regardless of what connections they had.
Yeah, whatever brought them together. They were friends and colleagues, and they worked on Voyager together. Yeah, and then they just realized they were madly in love with each other, and so they took Anne to the hospital and recorded all of her vitals, her heartbeats, her brain waves, all of that, and they decided eventually to put those recordings on Voyager. And right now, as we speak, Voyager's out there somewhere. Yep. And their recorded love of single-celled organisms, 4 billion of years of evolution, turns into these people. These people develop rocket travel and space travel. They record a very human thing, which is the concept of love. Mm-hmm. They put it on record. Right. On a gold disc that will last 1 billion years as long as nothing destroys it. And it's out there right now for something to find or not find.
I mean, I think the claim that Interstellar makes, and I think many people would make, is that love is something that isn't just human. Yeah. Like it's something that's more fundamental, and we talk about how, when you talk scientifically, you still ascribe human experience to physical objects. When they say 2 atoms or 2 electrons or 2 particles are attracted to each other, I mean, just think about that statement. 2 things are attracted to each other. That's something we experience. We don't know what it really means for 2 things to be attracted, except in the fact that we are attracted to things. So there's that, the fact that we can call it a human thing, but it's just because we think in human terms. Yeah. Another thing you think very deeply into these things, and my brain works like in a broken way, so I don't necessarily think along the same way as you. But I always think of these weird little things, and we had this discussion while watching it. They go on that planet where the ultra time dilation, right? And all that shipwreckage is there in the ocean, in the water. And they're not gonna, that's not the planet for them. So they have to leave, right? Right. And it probably never will be the planet for them. Sure. Ever. Yeah. But that planet, because of their visit there, will forever, until it degrades or washes, whatever,
has one little piece of evidence that we even existed.
Sure.
So even if, let's say, their mission failed and humanity went extinct, that little reminder of humanity is on this weird, distant planet on the other side of the galaxy, because they went through the wormhole.
I think they've said it might even be a different galaxy. But
yeah. And again, single-celled organisms to fucking monkeys to fucking people, rocket travel, effect, and it's fiction, so it's not real, obviously.
Right.
But the idea of that it's something out there is a little piece of this weird. It's the whole Carl Sagan. I think it was him that said it. It's we are the universe knowing itself, seeing itself,
learning,
about
itself.
Yeah, and that's just so weird.
Yeah,
it's a very weird thought.
Yeah, and I mean that kind of goes back to, like, in a way, what would connect us to other beings? Like, what would that longing be to wonder if something else is out there, right? Mm-hmm. And I think it's this connectedness of, like, there's something like us, or there's something that we belong to, like in Contact, right? It's like the alien says to her, like,
we do this
in all of this world of chaos and hardships or whatever, the one thing that gives us solace is knowing there's a community of other beings out there, and people or in species or whatever, aliens that are like us, and like we can come together, right? Mm-hmm. That we don't feel as alone, right? And I think that feeling alone and that feeling that lack is something that we can feasibly imagine that another alien species might experience, you know. I mean, okay, I think a good way to kind of wrap things up is just this idea, which is very real now, of space exploration. And we talked about in 2001 and in Contact how there's this human idea that somehow our future is among the stars. Mm-hmm. And in those two movies, it was very much in an exploration, positive evolution sort of way.
This one was out of necessity.
This one is out of necessity for us.
Well,
what are your thoughts?
I think it would be such a shame if something like an asteroid just blipped us out of existence. And even if quality of life wasn't what it is here on Mars, it would still be worth it to save humanity. And I think there's the out of necessity having the backup plan, but I also think it is the greatest adventure to go to another planet. Like, again, I always harp on this because I think it's incredible that in our lifetime, space travel is a brand new thing, like 50 years. Mm-hmm. 50 years new. Right. And that's 50 years after 4 billion years of evolution. No creature has ever left this planet until 50 years ago.
Yes.
Because I think it's a give or take 5 years, you know?
Sure, yeah.
That's just fucking incredible. And the idea that we could go to another planet, like, that's amazing. Again, that is the pinnacle of human experience in my... but also... You don't think we'll advance to a point where space travel, at least to and from Mars, is so convenient and affordable that eventually it's like plane travel here or now. At the beginning, it was just for the elite.
Sure, and I think again, even like the colonists that came to North America, right, and like we don't have to worry about
funded by kings and queens.
We don't have to worry about indigenous populations and stuff, but. Even like the poor folks who moved here did so out of desperation. Yeah. I think the desperation is just moved, right? Mm-hmm. And like, do those people have power when they go, if they go?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
But I don't even necessarily know that it will be strictly for the rich people. Elon has publicly...
I don't think it's strictly for the
rich people. Even at first. Maybe at the very, very beginning. Right. But Elon has stated that his goal is to make, even in his lifetime, I think he said, the cost of going to Mars indefinitely, $250,000, which is not outrageous. It's not outrageous. It's expensive. It's a lot. But look what you're getting. you get to live on a fucking different planet.
Yeah, but again,
and you can come back whenever you want.
Making a house affordable so people can buy a house for $250,000 doesn't mean that everybody, I don't know, buys that house for $250,000. I don't know.
Yeah.
Most people are still renting and living in shacks and whatnot in the world.
If
that's just a house.
I would do it in a heartbeat. I would do it in a heartbeat.
I'm not saying I wouldn't do it. I'm saying like, it's the debate between Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon Musk of like, where do we put our resources as a human race? And there are the people who are trying seemingly to flee and start over without any sort of like, should we be doing this? And
I don't think he's
what does it mean
fleeing and starting. I think he's straight up, we need a backup plan. The human race is too important to be kicked out of existence by a fucking asteroid.
Sure.
We need to have a separate backup plan.
And I don't disagree with that motive. Again, I think the implication and the aftermath of that would be that if it ever came to the point where an asteroid was heading toward Earth, there would be a very specific set of people that would be left here and a specific set of people that would not be here.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there would be, people who are able to get the money and, scrounge together or get smuggled or whatever.
But I feel like that's probably just a sad fact of life. That's kind of how it is in every aspect of life.
And I guess the question is, are we just making our society with all its problems somewhere else?
Well, I mean, those people are better than us. They deserve to survive. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, I think if you zoom out to the level of Interstellar where you're making those decisions about the human race as a whole, and like it's hard to argue, right, that like that's not the right decision.
Yeah.
And there's the people who will do anything to save themselves, and people who save those who love them, and people who just fight for the
Matt Damon's and the Matthew McConaughey's.
Yeah, sure. And I think when Michael Caine's character, Professor Brand, makes his decision, he is not thinking at all about the best interest of the people. He's thinking so broad that he can't even bother himself to think about the fairness of it, right? It doesn't matter how unfair it is. It's this greater good that transcends.
But I don't necessarily disagree with him.
I don't think, again, it's like, it's not that any one decision is right.
Yeah.
It's that if you make the decision, you have to take on all the baggage that comes with it. You have to be ready to sacrifice the Earth. You have to be ready to kill someone else or anybody else for that. And for Matthew McConaughey, when he actually convinces them to go to Dr. Mann's planet, Anne Hathaway's character says to him, you're being objective, right? And you're going to you might put yourself in a position where you have to decide between saving humanity
and
or
let's
going
see
home.
how you deal with that.
Yeah, and let's see what you decide.
Yeah.
And I think
that was a serve. That was a good retort.
Yeah, no, and it was just honest, and I think they're very honest with each other, and I think there's a respect between them, and they're all cards on the table.
And that's why now they're in love, and he's going to go find her.
I don't know.
Pretty much.
I mean, it kind of seemed like it, right?
It's like trauma bonding.
Yeah. Sure.
I
mean, you said that he bonded with the robot, right?
Oh, yeah. It was like, I said it was like a war vet, like an old war buddy. Like, kind of had that vibe. One thing, it's kind of not directly related to Interstellar, but I always think that it's the coolest thing that the natural mode of existence isn't what we experience in terms of gravity. On this planet, we really feel the effects of gravity because we're in a gravity well. And
we evolved under gravity.
Yeah. But everything else out there is floating.
Right.
And that's why I want to go to space so fucking bad.
Get back to your roots.
I want to fucking float. Weightlessness. That seems like a dream. I honestly could live out the rest of my days, even starting now, on a spaceship, on a flying structure like the one they had, where you could go in the center and you're weightless, and then go out, dip out to the spinning
drum.
Yeah.
That'd be a trip.
I think that's the most beautiful thing
I would
ever.
also enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's dreamy. It is the stuff of dreams. And again, a handful, if you count all the human beings that have ever existed, like 0.0001% have ever experienced that.
Sure.
And I think
that's
the closest to heaven I think I could ever Yeah.
As much of an adventure as I think that would be, and as much as I would love to do it, I think there's still a lot here to live for.
Yeah. Not really. I'm just kidding. Anyway.
Yeah. We got deep into it.
It was kind of all over the place at times.
We'll see where it ends up.
Yeah.
Thanks for chatting. Good time.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Next time.
What
was that?
That's a fucking theme song.
Oh, God.
Absolutely.
Talk about Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey, Splice.
Splice.